Good evening and welcome to the October 27th public City Council meeting and public forum. And we will begin with the public forum. It looks like we have a robust turnout. We have 37 people to speak. So let me review the rules first. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. And just a little reminder of our public courtesies. We want this to be safe and comfortable for everyone to speak, so no outbursts in the audience. If you want to show your approval, you can wiggle your fingers. And I would also ask, I will call 2 names at a time, and the second name, please position yourself in the chair so that you're ready to go when it's your turn, and that way we'll move with some efficiency. So with that said, first up is Todd Boyle, followed by Roy Ward.
Thank you, folks. You must be tired after that hearing today. I came to talk about the structural excess of our housing costs over the population's ability to pay. And so one of the things I'm going to ask for is for better data from the city, broken down at least into deciles, into tenths of our population as to their ability to pay, how much rent they can actually pay, rent or housing cost. This is different from how much their household income is, household being the unit that rents housing. What we really need to know is how many people in our population don't have enough money after they have to pay for medications and things like this, or family members or something like that. And so this is necessary to get a clear picture of housing need. So anyway, if we had this histogram today, then you would see that you could put the other line on that graph, and that would be how much rents are right now for the actual places that are available for rent. And that'd be like $500 a month or whatever the rooms are. So there's this line of how much rents are, and fortunately most of them aren't in the market right now to rent at full price. But then there's the capacity to pay. So this wedge down here is called homeless, right? Because it's the, or soon to be homeless as their rents eventually or inevitably are increased. You know, there's no defying gravity in the long run. So that's why we have a homeless crisis. But I'd also like to call attention to a larger problem of the conveyor belt, or the engine of displacement, and that is the people who have enough household income right now to pay for where they are, and but don't have enough if they ever got busted loose into the streets. And this is like 10,000 people, 15,000, I don't know. So I call them the first decile, the first 10%. And so we can look at this and watch this happening in slow motion. And the thing that is causing house prices to go up is financialization of our real estate, right? And that's its investment value is more than its value for housing. And the problems of distribution of income causing a lot of people to have a lot of money to buy that housing, and that being the only reasonable long-term investment, land and real estate. So we can't do a lot about that, but city policy drives housing prices, and you have excessive protections of single-family housing. You have barriers to upzoning or density. And your shameless capitulation to the majority, which is the homeowners, is what's causing this. And so what I want you to do is capitulate to the first decile for your policy choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy Ward, followed by Nick Dykes.
Hello, I'm Roy Ward. I'm from Betty Taylor's ward, and I'm here to speak support of the resolution opposing Measure 105. By the way, I'd like to start by thanking John Rees for passing the administrative order about not collecting information from immigrants, so thank you for that. So yeah, I don't feel any need to rehash all the arguments against 105 because I was here at the working group when the city passed its own ordinance for protection for individuals, and the arguments that were made there very much apply to this. It's at the state level, and that was passed unanimously, and I hope this will be too. I would like to add that it's really important to have it as protection as many levels as possible. We've got an ordinance for the city. There is something for the county, a board order for the county, and it's really important to have as wide a protection as possible. It basically is a matter of public safety, because the one argument I will mention is that with this, it makes people much safer for being able to go to the police if they're victims of crime or as witnesses. And I'd like to finish on a personal note. I moved here about 8 years ago. I'm a fairly recent immigrant, and I was made really welcome by everybody. And this welcome did not depend on my immigrant status or anybody else's. And I'd like to see that to be true for everybody. That we're a welcoming city, we're mostly welcoming state, and so please support the resolution against 105, and I'd like to see everybody vote for that and make it unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Dykes, followed by Karen Austin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Dykes. I live in Jennifer Ye's ward. I'm representing 350 Eugene tonight. This past September, 8 350 Eugene volunteers went to San Francisco to participate in the Global Climate Action Summit. The information presented tonight comes from the affinity workshops, which were numerous and open to the public. The best information came from presentations and discussions by mayors, city councilors, and city sustainability and energy directors. The things we learned are, we need to change the community mindset. We need to look at what other cities are doing. We need to look at what successful climate action plans have in common, and we need to talk about the role of the city and the role of the community. A climate action plan like the one we have is a roadmap for how to make deep reductions in global warming emissions. But a plan is only as good as its implementation. We must follow the plan with actions. We left the conference certain that serious climate action requires collective action, not individual lifestyle changes, although we know that the most important individual action we can all take is to vote. So 1, changing the community mindset. We need new views and a new type of leadership. We need our leaders to communicate the urgency to act and to change the path that we're on. Asking our community members and businesses to take voluntary actions will not get us there. People may not want to change, but we all know in our guts that we must. And we must be respectful and acknowledge that it's difficult for folks to change. But we learned that we should expect this pushback from the status quo and act with the knowledge that it won't last. Success will require a balance of incentives and non-voluntary policies. 2, what are other cities doing? Here are a few examples of actions and ideas that other cities have taken to make progress. Every one of these cities has a website with their climate action plans posted and updated, so you can see for yourselves what they're doing. The first example, Seattle has guides in their climate action plan on how to teach and engage disempowered community members as part of their equity and community mitigation planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Austin, followed by Carol Schurer.
Hello, I'm Karen Austin, and I'm in Betty Taylor's ward. I'm following up on what Nick just talked about, what we at 350 Eugene learned at the Global Climate Action Summit. In Santa Monica, California, the budget includes funds designated for outreach and community education as part of its Climate Action Plan, or CAP, implementation. Cities can't do it alone. Issues need supportive constituency. The Department of Public Works is now named the Department of Environmental Works in Santa Monica. Language can help set priorities. Cities can pass ballot measures for funding climate action plans. The CAP brings jobs, health, and a clean environment, which communities support. Regular reports and good data answer important questions. Are we making progress? Cities can use bulk buying of solar panels to increase adoption of electrification. Some cities are helping fund solar for low-income residents and creating partnerships with local credit unions to get low-interest green loans. Cities can make incentives available to electrify all buildings and transportation. Cities can make mandatory retrofits and place caps on energy use. More than one speaker mentioned that complaints and concerns about costs to meet codes fade when people realize that their buildings are more valuable and they cost less money to heat. Cities can spearhead action campaigns to engage residents in their homes and daily lives. When people upgrade their electric panel, encourage them to make capacity to allow more electrification later and to get off gas or for an EV home charger. Cities have instigated education programs to help citizens move from gas to electricity. Pilot projects are important because they inspire others to try something new, promote micro-projects, and find funding partners for citizens. Seeds of change can take hold and spread. Some caps are updated 3 times per year. Most caps include a carbon budget with line items and responsible individuals by name. Some cities impose a home energy score. This asset score comes from time of sale policies. This creates community messaging. Get a clean energy home, rooftop solar, upgrade electric panel, et cetera, et cetera. Resilience planning provides great engagement possibilities, like working through the lens of disaster preparedness. Recovery planning shows us weakness in our infrastructure that we must address.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol Shearer, followed by Deborah McGee.
Carol Shear, Ward 8. In Boulder, Colorado, voters approved a tax on every kilowatt of electricity used to fund and implement their climate action plan. The sustainability director has the latest technology heat pump, and she said it is working fine in cold Colorado. Oslo, Norway, has a guide for zero emissions construction sites. They said this sends a signal to the market to influence rapid shift to zero emissions. Car use is declining. Heating is 100% electric, and combustion engine cars will be phased out and not sold after 2025. Oslo is using electric backhoes, and Eugene still has gas leaf blowers. Oslo has a dedicated person to communicate about their climate goals. They create a carbon budget plan report 3 times a year. They use a climate barometer graphic to measure and communicate progress. Adelaide, Australia has 100+ CAP partners, including businesses and developers, and is among the world's top 10 most livable cities. Adelaide sets aside 1% of the city budget for emerging technology, creating incentives to take advantage of new opportunities. Adelaide created a new climate department with community and citizen engagement, including stories and examples of how to do it. Everyone who works for the city has a green job. The city of Yokohama, Japan, has 3.8 million people. As part of their climate action plan, they launched their 3 C's plan. They encourage making clever choices. They have a creation plan to provide driving innovation and alternatives. They collaborate and communicate. Their strategies included creating an inspiring mascot to represent their green agenda, a campaign called Cool Choices, Warm Choices, which created the Cool Biz category to incentivize lowering greenhouse gas emissions in the business sector. Yokohama has passed policies requiring a net zero building code for all new construction. Berkeley, California, in order to build the broadest possible coalition to implement a climate action plan, opened their CAP process to the entire community. They had 175 goals initially. The Berkeley website has a fantastic 11-minute video of their Berkeley Climate Action Coalition work. Check it out. Berkeley's sustainable buildings policy enforces new building codes and mandatory building audits and upgrades for existing structures. We appreciate that the cities of Berkeley and Oakland engaged more than 60 community organizations when they developed their CAPs. Oakland prioritized equity goals, and the sustainability director said, We don't do climate work unless there is an equity benefit. And added, you must have accurate data to connect those equity considerations. City leadership creates community engagement, and city staff must work to embed equity in the CAP, and staff must be trained to know how.
Thank you. Deb McGee, followed by Betsy Heights.
My name is Deborah McGee, and I've lived in the county for 33 years. I am also part of the 350 Eugene presentation. I'm going to answer the question, what do successful climate action plans have in common? It's smart to start with cities because emissions come from cities. It's where people live and use energy, and people care about their cities. Cities can be accelerating decarbonization game changers and be transformative hubs, leading with next generation practices. Here's a list of 7 really good takeaways from the most successful CAPs we learned about. Adopt zero emission standards for new buildings, build ubiquitous electric charging infrastructure, mandate recovery of organic material, electrify building heating and cooling systems, designate car-free and low-emission vehicle zones, empower local producers and buyers of renewable electricity, and set a climate budget to drive decarbonization. Effective climate action plans should convey these messages. Life is getting better, cleaner, healthier, and more efficient as we embrace a clean energy future and work to eliminate dirty emissions and put people, not fossil fuels, at the center of our economies. We're kicking carbon to the curb and prioritizing the physical and economic health of our people and communities. This is why cities must and will be at the fore of climate action going forward. We need zero emission building standards, and we must set an aggressive timetable. That is, no gas in any buildings by 2030. We need to drop goals set over 50 years out. They are unrealistic, and they send the message that we have time. We do not have time. The city needs a carbon emission budget with a goal to get to zero emissions. We must count CO2 like we count dollars. It must be very clear who is accountable in the budget by name. A carbon budget tells what reduction, by whom, by when, and at what cost. We must have precise data. We cannot know how much we have to reduce if we don't know the numbers of the current use. If we don't have metrics, you don't have credibility. Every city employee should be responsible for pushing green in their department, and it's vital to know who is holding them accountable to do that. Every 6 months, post an online progress report. Best practices include precise data, simple language, and measurable climate actions. City staff must work on the path to climate neutrality every single day. We can only hit our target if we electrify and stop using natural gas. In order to have accuracy, cities must use a consumption, not a sector-based inventory. Cities can develop a community energy transition targeting tool that is data-driven by neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Heights, followed by Chris McAllister.
My name is Betsy Hitz. Sorry, I live in Ward 1. The city has a moral responsibility to shape the way the community thinks. A lot of the success of the Climate Action Plan will come from public messaging and council policies. A city is a taxpayer-funded organization, and we need political leadership from councilors to prioritize the Climate Action Plan. The city needs a meaningful community engagement phase, knowing that the public has to lead with a message of, we all live with the climate, we are all facing changes, what are we going to do about it? Essentially, we can only hit our targets if we electrify everything and get off natural gas. A franchise fee in the gas contract, could help fund the power shift to electric. The Finance Committee plans the climate budget, which enables these changes that will improve quality of life. Community organizations need to be able to write the Climate Action Plan. We need to identify community partners to work on the goals. The city must ask, what ideas do community organizations and members have to bring new thinking to these problems? Solutions can come from the people being called on to build and implement the solutions. Developers do get on board. City staff must work on the path to climate neutrality every day. We must institutionalize the concept. How can we move quicker and find local projects and policies that will speed the adoption curve? Community organizing puts pressure on the city to motivate people to keep focused, to move implementation quickly forward. We must have sustained community engagement to succeed. We must bring together the broadest coalition possible. The activist community will help keep the public better informed about why bold actions are necessary. We want you to know we have your back as you make hard decisions. You must understand we will fight for our future, and we demand real goals that will result in real reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. This is the most persistent, pervasive disaster that the human species has ever faced. And we are on the very brink of running out of time to effectively address it. If the IPCC is correct, we only have 12 years to prevent climate disaster. These decisions you make around implementing the Climate Action Plan will affect our children's lives. We are counting on you to be our climate champions. Together we can do this. On behalf of 350 Eugene, thank you.
Thank you. Chris McAllister, followed by Otis Hashmeyer.
Madam Mayor, esteemed councilors, members of the public, my name is Chris McAllister, and I'm here from Springfield, but I come to you in the capacity of a citizen who happens to be on the Poverty and Homelessness Board and a member of numerous efforts to try and resolve in a meaningful manner the issues of homelessness within our county. I would first like to thank you for this opportunity to speak before you, as well as being able to work with several of you on shared projects, whether it's with the mayor's shelter work or with the numerous joint meetings on committee projects. These small steps add up as we try to find our way as a community. I also appreciate the continued support for our county's strategic plan to combat issues that help keep our brothers and sisters unhoused and unable to find legal respite. Within this plan is a comprehensive map for addressing the issues from a myriad of directions, from low barrier options to frequent user service engagement, known as FUSE, efforts, to crisis bedding, legislative alignment, and family housing. I have seen some of you in the meetings that speak to the shelter process or workforce training options, and I want to emphasize that this is a crucial work to help prevent deaths and inhibit generational and extended homelessness. That being said, the plan alone will not mend this immense issue. With a new police chief with experience in empathic engagement and improving discretional time use for his officers, and a mayor participating directly with county work, we need strong support from the city to create opportunity for strategic plans and dignified engagement to work. I ask you please consider how desperation camping, reduction of public parking without permission, and overextended stays at public parks are handled, recorded, and ultimately resolved. Adding criminal element charges and fees to those without homes or funds aim to inhibit the likelihood of housing, ultimately passing back costs on the taxpayers while depleting response times and positive outcomes in more positive, timely, and emergent needs. This will inhibit participation in countywide efforts to collectively address our community-generated plans to keep ahead of a very visual need, a need for a place to be, a need for a place to be with dignity. There are not many easy answers to many of the questions that face us. Not many of us expect all these to be swept away in one swoop. With that said, I ask but one thing. Please let compassion guide you and those who serve in your direction when you interact on every level with our less fortunate. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your service.
Thank you. Otis Hashmeyer, followed by Zandi Zinke.
I'm Otis Hashmeyer. I'm in Ward 1. Last Wednesday, you voted 5-3 to grant Obie and Barrett their MUPTI application worth $4.7 million. This is on top of Obie and Barrett will be building in a Donald Trump Opportunity Zone, a tract that includes Fifth Street Market, designated as a low-income community. Trump's Opportunity Zone's mandated in his 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, incentivizes investors by offering a tax haven for realized capital gains. It is another way the richest in this country can forego paying taxes while the poor and middle class pay. In addition to deferring income taxes through the Opportunity Zone investment, by the time the investment of tax-deferred gains in the Opportunity Zone is sold, the amount subject to taxes shrinks by 10% if held 5 years, 15% if held at least 7 years, which is the limit of capital gains tax, and if the investment of tax-deferred gains appreciates after having been held for at least 10 years, then those new capital gains earned in the zone are themselves completely tax-free. I do not think you should be combining MUPT tax credits with Trump Opportunity Zone developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Zinke, followed by Richard Kay.
I am in Ward 1, and I want to echo a few things said here first, or that will be said here, but I want to echo the first decile housing proposal, that you look into it and support it. It would be a proposal that would be directly empowering to the people and not do what Otis was just talking about, which is feed more money to the top. I also want to echo what I think will be represented here tonight, which is a request for self-management of the rest stops. We see that has been successful with the Nightingale rest stop, and there's no need to import and impose upon the people. It is hard for me to compose myself in your presence because of a number of things you have done. You referred the vote-splitting, undermining of democracy, appointed auditor measure to the ballot. Anyone with a brain knows that would split the vote and undermine democracy. Now, it's no surprise to me that some major proponents of that measure were Casey Barrett and Jenny Olam, who you have now given the MUPT tax break to, and you did it without pause, even though it was acknowledged that there was protest in the room and that there was minimal opportunity for the people to become aware of when the voting would take place. Now my one point of sympathy for you all is that you get paid very little, and all your information comes from this man who gets $250,000 a year and has a huge staff. And he puts forth neoliberal economic policies which you all blindly follow. Right? And so unless you can mandate that he provide other research for you that is clued into the reality of both climate disaster, climate catastrophe, and major income and wealth disparity, that is the main thing happening in the world today, and it's caused by the neoliberal economic policies, unregulated capitalism, of which MUPT is one of them. Thank you. I hope you give that mandate.
Richard, I can't tell whether this is Richard K., Richard Care, Richard Cave. No? Not still here? Okay. Angelina? Angelina here? And Angelina will be followed by Running Duck. What is that? Okay, you can be in the warm-up. Angelina, you're up.
Hi. With the protest that's going on and with the homelessness, we've been sleeping pretty well, pretty peaceful. We've been keeping it very quiet. We like where we're at. We haven't been harassed. We haven't been doing no wrong. We're just kindly wanting housing for all homeless. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure what your name is, so would you announce yourself, please?
My name is Running Deal.
Got it. Thank you.
And I'm also here to state the fact that, being at the protest, I have been able to get better sleep. I haven't been harassed by police officers or getting tickets because of the fact I'm trying to get 8 hours of sleep. And that is a great deal for not only myself, but my other homeless people as well. All we're asking to be is left alone. We're not asking for a whole lot. We just want a place that we can rest and be able to be human, not be harassed and bothered by everybody. we're not asking a whole lot. We're just asking for a little bit. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you. John Littleton, followed by Chris Pierce.
Hi, I'm John Littleton, and just want to speak on the behalf of the End Homelessness. I've been here on and off for about a year and a half, and Coos Bay and Eugene always getting harassed by the police and everything, trespass and ticketed in here and there about just sleeping on the street. I'm trying to find a place to rest just like everybody else, and there's no way we can do that when police are always harassing and everything. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chris Pierce, followed by Cliff Gray.
Hi, my name is Chris Pierce. I'm in Ward 3. Wanted to talk about the Dawn to Dusk shelter. I appreciated your guys' conversation earlier today. Was able to learn a little bit more about that, which was huge for me. I do work downtown, so it's important for me to know what's going on with that. A couple of things that I did appreciate knowing was that it was going to be manned by somebody besides the city. I was a little nervous about that, so I'm glad that you brought that point up, Mike, and I'm glad that you acknowledge the city's not in the business of running shelters. I think that's important to note for sure. I also like the fact that it's modular, that we can move it from location to location, and I think that's huge. So when we do decide to build on that lot, we can at least move it and still continue to use it. And again, I'm glad that some action is being taken because I do think it needs to be addressed. There are a few issues, though, that still concern me. One is this really doesn't address the affordable housing issue of this town, and it doesn't address that we're still allowing people to sleep outside. So we're creating this temporary shelter, but it's not a long-term solution, and it doesn't seem to be part of a long-term solution. It does seem to be very reactionary, which is a big concern of mine. It also seems there's no budget in place yet for it, which is really concerning as well as where is that money going to come from within the budget? Which part of the money are we pulling that out of to be used for? And so that's a big concern going forward. You know, some of my coworkers come down from Portland from time to time. This is an issue for them as well when they come to visit. You know, so it's not just people here locally that this is going to concern. Another concern is we have worked really hard to rebuild downtown and have huge strides. And how is that going to affect this? And could that roll us back within a matter of months? All the work that has been done in the last 5 to 10 years. Lastly, we talked about the riverfront development today too. How is this going to impact that? This is on the way of that connection that we're hoping to connect with downtown and the riverfront. And I don't know if anybody's taken that into account. When we look at that long term, how is that going to affect the riverfront development? Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff Gray, followed by Patricia Hadley.
Hello, Cliff Gray in Train-Song neighborhood on Bell Avenue. I turned in an article and an envelope for you, Lucy, if you've received it. I meant to make copies for each and every one of you. What it is from a Charlotte newspaper about Charlotte's ability to produce affordable homes. Basically, it's very similar to Eugene and every kind of demographic you can think of, both in incomes and the degree of development that they have done. What the article says is that they spent millions for developing affordable housing. Let's call them, 2 or 3 years ahead of us. But it's not housing anybody because they're aiming too high. I would say, we'll look at it and read it carefully, but if you aim these building projects to 60 percentile and above, that's not going to house the people who really need it. You've already seen the charts. You've already seen that the average income is $43,000 a year for Eugenians, and the AMI itself at 80% is actually more than the 43,000 we're talking about. So 60% is only a small drop below that. And as I heard Mike mention, cost per unit is what keeps those projects high priced and future rents. And that will not do. you must actually, when you do these projects, you need to point down to the first decile, like Todd mentioned, and in that range, 10 to 50%, or as low as you can get, because the lower that you aim these projects to house, the more choice our residents will have for their housing, because there may be some people who don't want to pay 30% of their income and have little baggage, and they may be satisfied and be much happier living in a low, $250 a month studio. So I would hope you look at that. I hope each one of you will get a copy of it. My last comment is about your Gordon Lofts, which kind of shocked me. I don't know who or what demographic is going to take up residence there. I have a real problem with that. But, in light, I'm going to give you the bad timing award for having that happen just before Measure 102 comes up to pass, because the first question they're going to ask is, what kind of system are you going to write up as a bond? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Patricia Hadley? Patricia here? No. Yes? Where? Oh, there you are. Followed by Michael Kerrigan.
Well, from my history, Betty Taylor, you and I are still here. Nice to meet you all. I'm here to talk about the LCC building downtown. It seems to me, for so many reasons, that you should give some consideration to reworking that building into a homeless boarding house. One that, I mean it in the sense that the people who live there are the people who have the sense of ownership for it, that people pay rent. I've talked to people, and, on a sliding scale, everybody wants to pay rent. Nobody's living downtown because they don't want to pay rent. It's because they can't. The building was originally funded by partly bonding money from the voters and property owners and renters of Eugene, Oregon. This might be a way to give them some of that money back. I think property owners would be pretty happy to get some tax money back, and renters also. It's been vacant since 2013. It's a 66,000 square foot facility. We could use sweat equity. For those of you who have gone down and visited some of the homeless camps, I'm sorry, my name is Pat Hadley. I have my master's degree in public administration from the University of Oregon. I thought maybe you should know who it was. Part of the work could be sweat equity. I don't know how much you've ever thought about something like this, but I'm currently, as a master's degree graduate from the University of Oregon, living at the homeless tent city across the street. And the people who are there have skills, and they have energy, and they have desire to be home, just like everybody else does. It's not a whole bunch of people who are just trying to not pay anything and get away without doing anything. It's really not that at all. Although there may be one or two, there's one or two of them everywhere. With sweat equity, we have construction workers over there. You have a thing on your website, the City of Oregon website, the City of Eugene website, that says it would cost you $8 to $12 million to fix that building up. And there's some urban development loan money ready. But there are people who have skills in those camps. There are construction workers. There are the sidewall people. There are just endless possibilities. If you went and did a survey, and if you want me to, I will, of skills that are available to build their own place. It's just, I really, really do wish you would consider it. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Kerrigan, followed by Linda Kelly.
My name is Michael Kerrigan, a proud resident of Ward 7. Clearly, we are in a housing and shelter crisis in our community. We need to take action that concurs with the recent Ninth Circuit Court opinion that our unhoused are legally entitled to a safe place to sleep. I'm thankful for and encouraged by the city's proposal to provide this safe place for a large number of our community members. However, for this to work, there needs to be involvement by a broad range of homeless advocates and the unhoused members of our community. Along these lines, we had a meeting of advocates at Calc last night who plan to be actively involved roll up their sleeves and be really, really involved. I'm also I want to speak briefly about ballot measure 105. I'm urging you to unanimously go on record opposing ballot measure 105. It's a personal issue for me. I have a daughter who's a immigrant from India. And so we need to powerfully proclaim that all are welcome in Eugene, documented and undocumented community members, and that we don't want our police to act as an enforcement arm for the Trump administration's anti-immigrant proposals. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak tonight.
Thank you. Linda Kelly, followed by Larry.
Hi, City Councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Linda Kelly, and I live in Ward 1. I'll be brief. I know Council has a lot of important issues right now, and the urgency of homelessness is really in the spotlight. Climate change is also urgent, and yet less obvious, as we know. And so working on local climate solutions often gets put off. I was disappointed to see the delay in the community outreach on the Climate Action Plan by the Sustainability Committee. It seems like that may be put off for the first of the year and then assessed, a few months later, and I found that disappointing. I'm asking you to move forward on making accessory dwelling units easier to create. As you know, Springfield has waived a number of its permitting fees, and I really ask you all to consider doing that. My end of Eugene in particular has a lot of very tiny houses on very large lots with people living in them that are often older and are not people with a lot of income. So it would both benefit the people who are currently living there if there was a really accessible way to put an accessory dwelling on that lot. And secondarily, it would, in my opinion, both address the crunch on housing, which then, trickles down into homelessness by having housing not affordable in our city. So this would create more housing. And as far as the Climate Action Plan goes, I really feel strongly that infill is necessary. It's going to be necessary for our climate action plans because infill and urban density are necessary to have good public transport that really works for people so that you have buses that run every 10 minutes, people will take them. You need urban density to do that. My other concern is, and I've worked on this in the past, is preserving our farmland. So with climate change, the Willamette Valley becomes increasingly important as farmland. We know California has longer and longer droughts and will probably continue into the future, and the Willamette Valley is going to be crucial in having an opportunity for food. So we really need to protect those urban boundaries. And one of the ways to do that is to make accessory dwellings more affordable to create. And so I thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your work.
Thank you. Larry, I don't have a last name. Is there a Larry signed up? Okay, I'll put that aside. Mike Hopkins. Mike, and then Mike will be followed by Mark Mills and Alicia Lynn Levy Wilson.
Hello, my name is Mike Hopkins, and I'm currently a member of the protest across the street. I'd first like to start off by saying it's nice to have somewhat a permanent place to sleep, even though it's still not a designated home. I think what we need to look at here is, as I think her name was Pat said, members of the protest and the homeless community actually have a set number of skills which aren't being looked upon. Instead, we're being looked upon as, you know, we're not equal to other members of society due to our presentation and ability to bathe ourselves, have a facility to use the restroom. Normal members of society have a place to sleep every night. They can wake up, actually go get a job. They have a place to store their belongings. They don't always feel like they're on the run, so to speak. You know, they have to pack up their things and go from one place to another. I know, speaking on myself, as far as some other people, that would make us feel safer as a whole. Now, just to revisit the temporary shelter that you guys were talking about, a couple things about that. There are some positives to it and some negatives. Some of the negatives would be, you know, dusk till dawn. You know, what are we going to do with the things after that? You know, and then this is one temporary shelter. And there's far more people than, you know, one shelter could house. So what are we going to do after one temporary shelter? You know, we're all supposed to be equals in a community, but as a community, we're supposed to be a whole. And to be whole, the homeless population is a part of that community. So I don't know if it's an issue of taxpayer money or where the money's going to come from for this, but as the lady said earlier, you know, we could implement some sort of work equity into something for a permanent structure, and then we can implement job programs and things like that to produce productive members of society instead of making them go from one place to the next. You can't sit on the corner or go somewhere because you're dressed a certain way. You can't use the restroom, things like that. It's all degrading. So I think as a community, we need to step together as a whole and see how to fix that. You know, putting us over there, you know, where the whole town can see. I don't know about anyone else, but that doesn't embarrass me, you know, because I know how I came to the situation. I came to Eugene in May from Indianapolis, Indiana, and was making $16 an hour and lost a job, you know. So now I'm part of this. Humble myself, you know, we're all the same as people, so we should treat everybody the same. Just because we're living over there in a tent doesn't mean we're not the same as somebody else that's sitting up there. You know, we might not have a car, but that doesn't matter. We got our 2 feet. We can walk to somewhere and we can do things. We're just not given the chance. So, thanks.
Thank you. Mark Mills and Alicia Lynn Levy-Wilson, and they'll be followed by Tom Perrin.
Hi, yes, I'm Mark Mills, and I'm with the protest across the street. And honestly, it feels kind of like really safe, and that we can actually slightly call home, but not really, until we get a permanent place that I don't know how to put it.
Basically, we are very safe in everything where the protest is just we as individuals also want better for ourselves too. You know, and being treated with acts of inhumanity doesn't help the homeless community. I myself, and I probably speak for a lot of the homeless people that are in this room today, feel that, you know, as a community, we should help those who are less fortunate than others. Sure. Even me, I will give my own shirt off my back if that's all, even if that's all I have. That's just who I am. And to just be that as you are, we're supposed to be, you know, and I'm really thankful for our safe place for the time being, but we need like a
more permanent structure for us to actually able to be called home, that like everybody, like a lot of you guys have, you know, and a mailing address, place to take a shower, everything like that, privacy, you know. Like we're humans too, you know.
But anyways, thank you for
listening.
Thank you. Tom Perrin. Tom here? No. Okay. How about Tracy Jocelyn? followed by David Strand.
Hello, my name is Tracy Jocelyn. I'm in Ward 3. Currently at 34th in Hilliard, and I'm reading a statement for Sarah Pictionary because she's a busy mom and a college student. Thank Council for temporary dusk to dawn and day center that will address some needs this winter. Encourage Council to move forward with their work on leaving rest stop approval in the hands of neighborhood associations. I ask that Council not only include but encourage the unhoused in this community to lead in the Dusk to Dawn camp and more so in the steps that will follow, expanding rest stops and the city's permanent shelter. I recall from last week's discussion regarding the Dusk to Dawn camp, Councilor Clark asked, well, who's going to run it? The answer is in the community the city is addressing in these efforts. Those who live without shelter are the experts on what kind of shelter they need. They can show you. Ward 9 is happy to help connect you with outreach resources and leaders in the community who need to be an integral part of this conversation as it moves forward. We will reach out to counselors in the coming weeks. My 2 cents is it's a city program and we don't have to be real extravagant like Shelter Logic is in this town, and they donate tents and make tents for all over the world for emergencies. Shelter Logic and water stations cost $230 a month, hand washing stations, but you can build one if there's water on site. We just really encourage input from people who have been doing it. And we've been running a rest stop, me and my partner, for 4.5 years with the city's assistance and nod yes. And we really keep our place clean, and it's kind of a place to focus. Like, of course it has to be clean, and there's so many goods about that for sanitary reasons and for remembering who you are as a homeowner and a human being, that it's important. Part of life is to be clean, and so that's just one avenue where if you expect it, it will happen. Housed people will be like, oh, you're so clean. I thought homeless people were dirty. But I encourage and invite anybody and everybody to come check out our rest stop at 34th and Hilliard, because we're proud of what we've done and we're unhoused and we're doing it together. So thank you so much for all your work, and thank you for your idea and encouragement to help people.
Thank you. David Strand, followed by Wayne Martin.
Good evening, councilors, and thank you for this time to talk. I'm David Strahan. I live just outside the city. My business is here in Wards 1 and 2, but my heart is in Ward 9. I'm here to thank you for the steps recently taken by council to help those without walls. As we heard Mike Clark just say, our residents shouldn't be sleeping outside. Really plain and simple what it comes down to. Thank you. Shelter takes a lot of forms, and if a first step is a tent, that's still better than sleeping on the curb or getting kicked in the butt by an officer in the middle of the night by the river. I'd like to encourage council to consider all service providers who may be able to provide some, if not all, of the parameters required or requested with this plan. As a health issue, I think hand washers are a must. I think if we want the residents there to compete on an equal basis with everybody else in this community, showers are a must and should be included in that design. I know St. Vincent has many of the durable items and workforce available to do this, but there are other agencies and groups who have done this work, and a compilation of those groups might well be the best group to carry this plan forward, certainly with a huge knowledge base, as Tracy just spoke of. I'd like to see a work group formed to explore this possibility, and I would hope that one of the councilors would move that forward as a request to form a work group to look at the possibility of outside agencies assisting the preferred provider, even though I'm actually employed by that provider. I want to see a compilation of other groups take on this project. I dearly hope this paves the way for a full-service, durable building, community resource center. I kind of hope this paves the way for that. And I want to move forward with a related issue, and it's one that you guys are all aware of. The recent Ninth Circuit Court ruling has some very severe financial consequences for this city if we don't pay careful attention to current and past convictions also. Somebody that's still held under the legal law under past convictions could certainly file an expensive lawsuit with the city under the Ninth Circuit ruling. I just want to be aware. I want councilors to take that aware, and let's look at what's being done with previous pot convictions in the same light. We know we're expunging previous minor possession tickets. Let's start looking at the CT 1 and 2s, the trespass, and look at those lower level offenses and see if we're actually following the Ninth Court ruling. Again, I'm going to throw a thank you out there because you guys probably aren't going to hear my last sentence, but I want you to hear it. But I want to thank you very much for moving this project forward. This was a site that we talked about 4 years ago, so I'm really glad to see this moving forward. And Brian Noby didn't need any tax breaks.
Thank you.
It just further burdens the middle class.
Thank you.
And the true working class residents of this town.
Thank you.
The 10th decimal, as Todd mentioned.
Thank you very much. Wayne Martin, followed by Donna Riddle.
I'm Wayne Martin, and I live in Ward 1. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you for the recent work that you're doing now and looking diligently into providing shelter for people who desperately need it. I think it's a courageous move. I think, from what I've heard, in 2 work sessions, you have a lot of good ideas, and I just hope that you stick with them and move quickly. A group of us sought to find a place recently in which unhoused and underhoused folks can read or browse books or magazines or newspapers, sit quietly, write letters, talk quietly, plan their days, plug in their phones, and even get on the internet, not to mention having a cup of coffee. To our delight, the First United Methodist Church at 13th and Olive has invited us to use their library in this way. In the first few gatherings, the folks agreed on a name for this enterprise, TCRR, the Toaster Church Reading Room. It's open from 10 to noon on Wednesdays and Fridays, and we're now up to about 10 to 12 regulars. The church has been great. Our discussions are really quite informative to me. I'm listening a lot and learning a lot. I'm hearing a lot of stories, and I'm hearing a lot of thankful expressions about the upcoming sheltering proposal, and some anxieties as well, but a lot of gratitude. Now is a very good time to build the confidence of the unhoused community, confidence in the system, that you should seek their input. These are our true experts on being sheltered, coping with sheltering, and even coping with survival. You can learn so much from them, as I have. As far as the camp that is currently located behind me, I don't see it so much as a protest camp. I see it as a survival camp. People are desperately interested in being protected by one another and offering even self-policing against invaders and against drug addicts and against people who are simply mean-spirited. So I urge you, set up a mechanism where the unhoused themselves, who are living responsible lives, can be part of the input process. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Riddle, followed by Bob Cassidy.
Donna Riddle, Springfield, Oregon, and I want to thank you for acting to use the old City Hall site for providing a little bit more help for the unhoused. There are some things that I saw that need to be added to that site. David mentioned some of them. A shower is incredibly important. Even more important is a hand washing station and water. There needs to be water at that site for people. And as far as an 8-foot fence goes, I think that when we had the pit on Willamette Street, we used canvas with murals on it. And I think you could use the existing fence and put murals on it that would provide, and maybe some trees outside, but some landscaping would be a lot cheaper than an 8-foot fence. I also want to echo the hope that you will act as a body to come out opposing 105. It's really important to be a safe place for everyone in our community, and we don't need to be using local resources for what the federal government is responsible for. The last thing I want to say, I saw somebody about needing agricultural land in the future, and I was really disappointed in Envision Eugene the other day when I saw that you are moving ahead with allowing light industrial uses out by the airport, which has Class 2 soils. Thank you, though, for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Bob Cassidy, followed by Kathy Walker.
Bob Cassidy, Ellen Zelenka's ward. Comments from the work session this afternoon. The waterfront planning, I was really disappointed in. I thought the bicycle plan, the path for that was very good. And everybody at the public hearing sessions thought it was very good too. But the report that I heard you get was as vague as the whole process of getting information from the public at those sessions. What is really needed there is a connection of that property to the Alton Baker Park with a bridge, and that should be talked about a little bit more. It's been thought about by the planners. Proceeding to get something like that would change the whole planning of the park and everything that would be there. It would make it considerably different. Just the contact of everything that's around that should be planned together with that park. A bridge over there would also get rid of the wire that's over the city. Putting low-cost housing on the most valuable piece of property that we have in the city just seems bizarre. I mean, obviously, it's just bizarre to me. The use of the city park, the city park over here for the homeless, I think, is something that's been asked for by the citizens of the community for quite a few years, and it's good, even though it only covers 38 people out of 130 that come in every year. I think the vacant buildings that we have in the city should be used at least for sleeping accommodations at night, particularly the city-owned pieces like the old Montgomery Ward's building, Lane Community College on Willamette and 11th, empty for years. I know it doesn't have a sprinkler system, but it can be used temporarily overnight, or the eWeb building, which may be empty, could be thought of. There could be other empty buildings like that arranged for, at least for sleeping purposes, if not more. I'm concerned about the property exchange that the city is having with the county for that property. If that goes forward, now the county owns that and all the people sleeping on that block. they're the ones that are going to have to remove them. Where are they going to go? There isn't another place in town that big to move all these people.
Thank you.
Some talk got to be done with the county people.
Thank you. Kathy Walker, followed by Christopher Sakarik.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Kathy Walker, and I believe I'm in Ward 4. And I'm here tonight to also talk about the many people that are here looking at this opportunity that you're willing to give to our homeless individuals, to at least get them out of the elements for a temporary time. It's big. That's really big, and I'm really glad to hear you guys making progress with it. I do want to bring up that EPD in the last, since October 1st, has been dispatched to 66 times to illegal camps. That's not gone out and found. That has been dispatched to those camps. Why? There was no other crime at that time in those interactions. And in the last 7 days, 65 dispatches to criminal trespass. We all know that those at least 3/4 of those criminal trespass tickets are being written to people that are unhoused because they're in public space. That could come back to bite you, and I don't want to see that. I have to pay for that out of my pocket, too. You have a whole system of people out here that have created ways around trying to deal with this problem while the rest of us caught up and figured out there was a problem, something other than what we thought to begin with. And there's a lot of experience in basic survival and sheltering of our homeless neighbors sitting in this audience tonight. You guys really ought to tap into that. I'm just glad you're starting to move forward on something big. But 38 people, that's a great start, don't get me wrong. But we're 1,672 people were counted on the last day in January. That's a lot of people to try to house, and we have less than 1,000 beds still. So let's work together and get this done. We can do this. And if we do this, your crime rates are going to drop. Their problems, the complaints, all that drops. So just consider. And thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you. Christopher Sakarik, followed by Shell, a.k.a. Ma.
Yeah, I'm Christopher Sakarik. I'm here on behalf of myself and ending the homeless problem. And this is from my own experience and from my own feelings. The design of public spaces here in Eugene is increasingly organized to deny the poor a place to live, usually locations which are temporary. The issue with being without a grounded living arrangement is as if the right to move around, to take up space, or to direct your own life has become just a luxury to those who could pay instead of being human rights. Not everyone is out here purposely. Some are in a transitional state and others are not. It may be an issue where someone could be no longer afford the rent despite a lack of employment, underemployment, or being unemployed, or being rebounded back into the system by legal entanglements, or struggling with an addiction. The process of finding affordable housing is confusing and misleading, which makes it hard to know when to apply, leaving someone unhoused. Without permanent affordable housing and transitional sites, people are left without a place to live. The dilemma comes with the worry of most people being stigmatized, limits to their autonomy, and deprivation of basic human needs. Misconceptions and societal expectations of the unhoused is problematic, and sometimes the general public is unaware of what is happening with someone on an individual basis. Not everyone is out here by choice. The system is designed to create barriers in a way that justifies to suppress the unhoused by denying them access to resources that keep them alive, such as housing, health care, and food assistance, which is a matter of personal survival. These are from my personal experiences and my own feelings. Thank you.
Thank you. Shell, followed by Kimberly Gladen.
Good evening, folks.
Y'all know why I'm here. I just want to say that I appreciate everything that you've done with trying to get the city on board, whoever St. Benny de Paul's works for, but I think the only thing that we need from y'all would be peer support specialists to help our folks to maybe get medicine, colostomy bags, maybe for job interviews, just right, I got so many things on this paper. Just lead them in the right direction. I know a lot of people that are out there who work for LCH, Whitebird, Willamette Family, just to say a few that are peer support specialists that would love to have an opportunity to work in a place such as a homeless shelter. I am not living at the camp. I am living in a hotel, which is costing me my life. I have 2 weeks left, and then I'm digging into my first and last month's rent. I was homeless for 2 years. I have saved lots of money, and I cannot find a place to live that is under $900 right now. If it's not a student, I don't have daddy's bank card in my pocket. I cannot afford to pay $900 and share a bathroom with 4 children. So the housing is just off the chain. It's too expensive. I work and I get a check. I make $1,200 a month and I can't afford to even put in an application. But like I wanted to work at these warming centers for Egan, and they didn't, after I sat through the whole thing, they pulled me aside and said, you can't work for us, you can't volunteer here, and my middle name is volunteer. I worked for St. Vincent de Paul's in California for 9 years, volunteering. So I know their worldwide system. But I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, what? What was I saying, Tracy? They don't let you work at the Egan's Warming Center if you've been homeless for 2 years, and that's just a crock of crap, because who knows us better than ourselves? I have learned to be a better camper, a better soldier, a better survivor. I have picked up more crap and trash from house people than I have from homeless people. They're dog shit, too. They let it walk by and poop, and I chase people down with bags in Alton Baker Park. We need to show the public the whole picture. If I have learned anything with being with Ward 9, is we only show the media half of stuff, half. If they would just give us a barbecue and let people come in and talk to us. We have so many talented people out there. We have people from all races and walks of life, babies, cats, dogs. We just need a spot for us. It doesn't have to be by the riverfront. Just give us a spot and let us govern ourselves. Just give us help, please, folks.
Thank you. Kimberly Gladen, followed by Robin Bloomgarden.
Hi. I'm going to start out first saying I find that camera to be a form of intimidation and harassment, and I want it removed while I'm here speaking because I find it very, very harassing. Thank you. I came tonight for a lot of reasons. And right now I'm really upset about a lot of things. The downtown has some problems. I was harassed the other day when I was trying to go to work by someone who was demanding money from me. 6:30 in the morning, I said no, and I asked them to leave me alone. They continued to follow me. They followed me for over a half a block, bothering me despite that 5 times I told them no and leave me alone. It was dark. It was early. There weren't many people on the streets. The only way I got that person to stop following me was to stop and start screaming. At the moment, I probably should have called 911 and gotten the police down there, but they turned around and left after that. Nobody should have to do that. Nobody should have somebody harassing them on the way to work and to take the bus. I think that we do need to do something with the homeless. We need a lot of drug and alcohol treatment. We need to get people into jobs. We've had this camping protest before in the downtown. It was devastating to the small businesses and a lot of low-income workers who ended up in deeper poverty because their hours got cut. The business I worked for eventually moved out of the downtown. And because they moved into smaller quarters, I had lost my job. But during the time that the camping protest last time was going on, I ended up at the point where I made less money than that raise you gave John. And I don't see any of you living on that or being willing to live on that. But you did it to a lot of low-income workers. I know people who had trouble feeding their kids and almost lost their own housing because their hours were cut with their jobs. I want you to consider that. I'd also like you to consider the fact that drugs are a big problem in this town. The city council and our former mayor, Kitty Piercy, allowed people to deal drugs openly on our streets for well over 10 years. You could walk down Broadway and people were calling out, Vicodin for sale, Xanax for sale. You know, hey, sister, you want some weed? I got weed here for sale. Those things are still going on downtown. You have open drug deals going on in the Courthouse Plaza on Saturdays. Nothing you're doing about it. These issues have to be tackled, and we got to get people into jobs. There's help wanted signs everywhere. There's no reason for someone not to have a job. So that's a big thing. We got to get those vacancies filled, and thank you.
Thank you. Robin Bloomgarden, followed by Gabriel Dennison Chandler.
Hi, it's Robin Bloomgarden, and I'm in Claire's ward now. And I just wanted to stand with you all when you unanimously vote no on 105. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabriel Dennison Chandler, followed by Lori Hauber.
Good evening. Gabriel Dennison Chandler. I live in Ward 7. And I'd like to just support the allotment of any city space for our homeless population, because I think we need to realize that the homeless population is our homeless population. We are the homeless population because any one of us could have some kind of equivalent catastrophe in their life and they could end up homeless, just like that. And I think that if we want people to get jobs and to improve their current lifestyles, because being homeless creates its own problems, then we need to realize that social contribution can only happen and cannot improve as long as someone is driven and harassed and followed and disturbed at all times, because we need to be able to break the cycle of nomads that we have created, not us perhaps, but not in each individual person, but that our society has created by looking at our homeless population as other. They are not other, they are us. I would also like to support you in voting no on issue 7, or no, it's not issue 7, what is it, 105? Because I would like this to remain a sanctuary state, because Oregon is, if we could only remain for a little while as a Camelot, because a long time ago, Eugene was an extremely beautiful town with people who promoted change and growth and a vision of the future. And I would like to see that retained as long as possible. I would like ourselves to retain ourselves as a light of democracy in a growing darkness, but not as something that has been snuffed because of fear and because of shameless conservative individualism, because we should remain unified as a whole, as a community, as a society, and not be able to withdraw within ourselves and start thinking that one of us is better than the other. Because where one person goes, we could go there too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lori Hauber, followed by Eric Jackson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for holding this forum tonight. And I want to thank all of you as city councilors and city manager for moving this proposal forward quickly, particularly in light of the impending cold and rain that's coming. A few people have mentioned the issue of liability this evening, and as a corporate lawyer, I like to think about liability and how entities can minimize their liability. And so I have a few comments to make on that and a few proposed solutions for all of you to consider as you work, not only on this immediate, short-term, very short-term solution, but a permanent shelter and other solutions toward creating and increasing our housing supply. First of all, under the recent Ninth Circuit Court decision, we know it's about local governments not criminalizing people who are unhoused when they have nowhere else to go. And here in Eugene, under our prohibited camping ordinance, EC 4.815, that there is no jail time involved. However, failure to pay a fine can lead to an arrest. And not only that, the accumulation of fines is its own form of punishment because the accumulation of fines makes finding housing and employment even more difficult. So punishment is still central to our own ordinance. Also, I would argue that it's a potential violation of the equal protection of our 14th Amendment of our Constitution because citing people who are homeless because they're homeless and have nowhere else to go disproportionately impacts people who are homeless. And so for these reasons, I would suggest considering a few other measures as you work on housing and shelter. One is to stop citing people under our prohibited camping ordinance until there is a lawful place and a safe place for everyone to sleep. And also consider amending 4.815. Happy to talk about those details at another time. But basically, so sleeping materials is not part of the exclusion because how can someone sleep when they're cold without a blanket or some other form of protection? And then I also would urge you to consider eliminating the outstanding fines that people have under the anti-camping ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. And our Eric Jackson, followed by Heather Sleeky.
Council, Mayor, John, I thank you guys for all the work that you are doing to help the homeless. Councilor Semple was one of the first that I had the opportunity to thank just for meeting at the Human Rights Commission meeting. And I thank all of the groups that I go to and associate with. I thank them for meeting because the meeting is half the battle because you're talking about it and thinking about it and putting it into the air. To think that the formula is 20, as the mayor told me in a meeting, before there's problems, I beg to differ, and I sit across the street from you for exactly that reason, to beg to differ. There's upwards of 100 currently. I have upwards of 200 people a day. At the Skunks, which is the corner of Charlton and Broadway, I had 150 people a day, yet only half a dozen or a dozen sleeping at a time. These people were poked by backs of flashlights, people that have serious medical conditions, woken up after being sleeping for 2 hours. It's appalling. To prevent somebody from getting REM sleep is where the cruel and unusual punishment begins. No officer at any point in time knows what that person's problem is, what's been going on, and when they fell asleep. It's a serious, serious burden on everybody out there. It's not a burden that I have because I camp well out of the line of sight, except since the 6th of September. Since the 6th of September, I've been sleeping on the concrete. My guide for having a good day is getting up, my eyes open and I can see, breathing in and out, and getting out of bed without my back hurting. Yeah, my back hurts all the time because I'm sleeping on the concrete. And I still have good days, and I still put that line very, very low as to what it takes for me to have a good day. But the reason that I have good days lately is because I am thanked 100 times a day, every single day, for somebody getting peaceful, uninterrupted sleep, some of them for the very first time in months. When Patricia, the 73-year-old that you saw speak, was directed to me by the police, she was a person that was going to sleep in a tent. And at that point in time, I had absolutely zero tolerance for tents. Since then, because she was sent by the city, I notified the powers that be that, hey, I'm going to give it a try and allocate space accordingly. We've done a good job. They've done a good job. Overseeing a larger number is easy. I had a pizza place that sat 150 teenage kids from the high school. There's no reason that 150 to 300 is an unreasonable number for the piece of property next door just for the winter. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker, Heather Saliki.
Hello. So I've got three things I wanted to say tonight. One, first of all, thank you to all of you for going with the community safety strategy and voting for the bridge funding. By including shelter in some of that, you really showed that you understand that as long as people don't have somewhere safe and legal to be, we can't really talk about a safety strategy. Secondly, I wanted to say, first, do no harm. I'm concerned that we have laws on our books that have a disparate impact on people who are unhoused, and this creates a climate of fear. We impound cars that people live in, and I think it's time for us to look at other solutions. Can we expunge records for people who have been cited for criminal trespassing if it's presenting a barrier to their getting housing? Can we create a temporary permit for people who have to sleep in place? We're putting in some great solutions, but they're not going to help everybody. And third, I want to say, this is maybe most importantly, don't forget the stakeholders as you implement this day center and temporary dusk to dawn site. This is going to be highly visible. This is going to be how you're going to be selling the community on why we need this. We need to make sure that mental health consumers are involved. We need to make sure that caregivers and the resource providers are involved. Is this a trauma-informed design? And what I saw when I saw the picture up there, it was only 1/4 of that lot that you were planning on using. What about 1/4 of it for Conestoga huts and tiny houses on wheels? What about room for supervised overnight parking on another quadrant? What about a socio-medical aid station so that people can get help? Instead of talking about the lowest cost option, let's talk about this investment in outreach and education. Let's put this site to the highest use and the best use. Let's make this a rest stop and future parking and safe spots incubator where people can come together as communities and find economic engines so that they can put a rest stop in every ward. And let me say this to you too, we need your help. If you're going to put a rest stop in every ward, we need you guys to put some skin in the game and come with us out to our neighborhood meetings. We just did a showing of Under the Bridge for 400 people in this community who wanted to come and find out more about what we're doing for the unhoused. So come with us, the Human Rights Commission Homelessness Working Group. We're going to be doing another film series in January and February with the movie Tony, and it talks about how successful Housing First implementations have been done. So let's do it together. St. Vinny's, they're going to step up and they're going to do it, but it's only going to work if we empower the people who are most impacted by this problem. So let's do it together, but let's do it big.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who testified. That was an impassioned evening and many ideas. Do I have councilors who wish to comment on anything they heard? Councilor Syret, go for it.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone who came to speak. I know a number of people have already left. A lot of compelling testimony and ideas for us to consider. So I just want to say, if we still have the dusk till dawn site on our City Hall lot when we finish the riverfront development, we will have failed. This dusk to dawn site is an emergency response. It's not a solution. And, you know, I agree with the critique of someone said that we don't have a comprehensive plan to address homelessness. But we are in the process of getting our arms around how adding a low barrier public shelter to our current landscape of services in the form of a system analysis that's being provided by the TAC consultants who have a lot of experience with looking at social service systems in communities throughout the country. And that work will include strategies for using our current capacity of services, which they've identified as being underutilized in some cases, to significantly reduce homelessness. And they've outlined a plan, and they'll give us more depth in December, of how we can add to our shelter capacity while increasing the usage of our current capacity to really get close to reducing homelessness, I think, as much as could be actually possible. And I did want to point out that this Dusk Till Dawn site, the downtown site that we're talking about, will include a day center, so folks will be able to stay there during the day. And there will be case management and other social service providers besides St. Vincent de Paul who will have access to folks there and help them get connected with services and potentially housing. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you. Councilor Semple.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who came and spoke about all these important issues. I would like to say that I appreciate the concern about the Boise case and whether or not it will affect us. I did ask for a work session, but the poll only got 3 votes. The Human Rights Commission is sending a letter to council listing many of the concerns that were brought up tonight for ways that we could help our unhoused. I'm really looking forward to being able to help some people at City Hall, and we know it's temporary, and yeah, it would be great to use the whole thing right away, but that's not going to happen. So let's see what we can do with the quarter lot and how many people we can help and what a great model we can make of it for having more sites. Whether they're run by campers or other organizations, we need more sites. So I'm glad that we're making some progress, and I'm thankful to the increased cleanliness and organization of the protest across the street. I think it will be very, very important to keep City Hall clean and organized, whether you can see through the fence or not. And I'm hoping it will be so successful that people will calm down a little bit about helping our vulnerable people, that we can prove it is safe and that can use that model in all of our wards. And I think this was in Councillor Zelenka's ward, so congratulations for joining the 4 wards that are housing the unhoused. And thank you to everyone who came, and to the city manager and staff for really working hard on this one bit of progress. So keep the faith, keep working together, and keep coming to tell me about it.
Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. I think it's a good thing that we're going to have the use part of the City Hall, former City Hall site for homeless. I still think that the LCC building is in an ideal location, and that we should try to get that to be an indoor shelter. I don't think it would be enough, but it would be a good start. I want to especially thank the 350 people who are reminding us of what's the most urgent problem in the world, whether we continue to exist or not. Climate change is more than something temporary. It's a question of the existence of the human race, actually. And I thank you for your persistence.
Any other council comments? I want to add that comment as well for the 350 folks. It was, I'm very interested in following up on some of the models from other cities that you revealed. So thank you for that list. That was helpful. Okay, I think that closes the public forum part of our session, and I believe Councilor Syrett, we'll put you up first here.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. So I've prepared a resolution that, if passed, would declare the Eugene City Council's opposition to ballot measure 105. That's the ballot measure that is proposing to negate our decades-long sanctuary state law. And so I'm going to just put a brief motion out and speak to it further and read the resolution if I get a second. So I move that the Eugene City Council adopt a resolution opposing ballot measure 105.
Second.
So I learned that both the Corvallis and Salem City Councils have adopted similar resolutions and believe that this council should take similar action. I will read my the draft resolution for the record. The Eugene City Council, being the local representative government for the residents of Eugene, makes the following declaration regarding their opposition to ballot measure 105, which, if passed, would repeal the state of Oregon law prohibiting law enforcement, ORS 181A 820, from acting in the capacity of a federal immigration agent. Whereas the Eugene City Council has a stated commitment to creating a city that is safe and welcoming to all residents and visitors. Whereas the Eugene City Council has taken affirmative action to reassure our immigrant neighbors that the City of Eugene will not engage in discrimination based on their perceived immigration status, and that the City of Eugene will endeavor to protect individuals' personal information from being accessed for the purposes of enforcing federal immigration laws. Whereas a relationship of trust and respect is paramount for the City of Eugene Police Department to effectively protect the safety of our residents and ensure that victims of crime feel safe reporting those crimes to the Eugene Police Department. Whereas the repeal of Oregon's sanctuary law will result in a reduction of trust among our city's most vulnerable communities and therefore increase the likelihood that crimes committed against them will go unreported, resulting in a decrease in safety for all Eugene residents. Whereas the state of Oregon's law prohibiting the use of local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law has meant continued local control by the City of Eugene over how our local law enforcement resources are allocated, and the repeal of this law will result in a loss of local control of these limited resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Eugene City Council formally opposes ballot measure 105 and encourages voters to reject this ballot measure and its attempt to repeal the decades-old Oregon law that has helped maintain both public safety and local control of police for the residents of the City of Eugene.
Comment? Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I believe that the City of Eugene is committed to a safe and welcoming, be a safe and welcoming place to all, and we have taken a strong stance to protect individuals' personal information. And voting yes, I believe, will decrease trust among the most vulnerable parts of our community, increasing the likelihood of crimes going unreported, and thereby increasing victimization and, ironically, crime. So I urge people to vote no on Measure 105, and I will support the resolution.
Any other comments? Councilor Clark.
I really am not comfortable with us making comments on ballot measures like this. I think it's divisive, unfortunately. So there's, at this moment, I'm still not, because I haven't done adequate research to know, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this measure. I previously supported and voted for the resolutions that we've made at the city level but those were in keeping with the fact that this statute existed and in keeping with some important ideas that I hold and principles that I hold. I'm a Republican person. My party's wrong on this issue. I have said so many times. But at the same time, there is a differentiation between those who are immigrants to our country legally and those who are here illegally. I'm the grandson of an immigrant who came to the United States. And at the same time, I have Native American ancestors as well. This is a weird issue for me. I'm at this moment, I'm still not sure how I'm going to vote on this particular thing. There's a couple of pieces of the state law as it exists that keep us from doing things that I think are important to do as a state to keep us safe. One of those is that it led to, as I understand it, a Clackamas County court case that keeps jails from holding ICE detainees or ICE requests for detainment or criminals who are in jail. And the removal of this, as I understand it, would help get more folks who've committed crimes in our state extradited and deported, and I'm in favor of that. So I think it's really unfortunate that we have to have this vote without a more thorough conversation if we're going to take it seriously. So,
Councilor Pryor and then Councilor Syret.
Thank you. I was on the Human Rights Commission when this issue first came up, and in talking with folks, one of the reasons they wanted to do this was out of concern that there might be, at some point in the future, an effort to repeal this, and they wanted to ensure that we had something in place at the local level. And I'm glad we have something in place at the local level. And as they feared, it has come to pass that there's now a measure on the ballot to try to repeal something that is literally decades old in the state of Oregon. And I think it's important to note that both that statewide measure and what we passed here locally, that we worked on very long and hard to ensure we got it right, doesn't really affect or impact criminal proceedings. If you commit a crime, regardless of where you're from, if you commit a crime, that is still prosecuted, that is still pursued, and that is still subject to arrest and prosecution. This really deals strictly with immigration status and the use of information, the collection of information, and the dissemination of information around immigration. And so I agree, I don't want to affect our criminal law. I don't want to affect laws that would not allow us to effectively prosecute criminal activity, regardless of where somebody is from or regardless of who they are. But I think to invest resources and efforts and lose local control in order to simply investigate immigration status is something that I'm not prepared to be supportive of. So I support this measure because I think it protects what needs to be protected and doesn't damage what still needs to be there with regard to criminal enforcement.
Councilor Syret.
Yeah, thank you. You know, there was many reasons I could encourage voters to oppose Measure 105, you know, the concern about increases in racial profiling, and a whole myriad of things that I could have put into this resolution. But this would be a resolution adopted by the City Council, not by me personally. And so I wanted to keep it very focused on the role that we have to be good stewards of the public resource and to create, as I say in the resolution, trust between our community and our Eugene Police Department. So I did want to actually offer a slight amendment to the resolution that someone pointed out to me and was also pointed out in an email we received from a community member who's in support of us adopting this resolution. This community member shared that some time ago her daughter was in a car accident by a man who was speeding, and one of the things that helped lead to the conviction of this person who put her daughter in the hospital was 3 Latino men who were witnesses, and they were willing to come to court and testify in that case. And if we repeal our sanctuary state law, those folks would not be coming to court to help support someone else in a case like that. So I'd like to actually make a small amendment to number 3, where I speak to the relationship of trust and respect is paramount for the City of Eugene Police Department to effectively protect the safety of our residents and to ensure that witnesses to and victims of crime feel safe reporting those crimes to the Eugene Police Department. So will the second accept that?
That was me.
Was it Alan who seconded? Oh, there we go.
Yes.
You accept that? Okay. All right, thank you. Any other comments from councilors? Are we ready to vote? All in favor of the resolution? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Excellent, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. I think that's a very, very important step to take. So I appreciate you putting it forward, Councillor Syret, and well done, well done. Okay, we are now ready, consent calendar.
Move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Excellent. Okay, I now am closing the council. Well, do I have to close? I don't have to do that. Anyway, I never know when to use this gavel.
It's council.
We're opening a public hearing on an ordinance to extend the term of the ordinance number 19775 and ordinance number 20397, granting to Comcast of Oregon 2 Inc. a franchise for operation of a cable communications system. So I'll turn it over to you, Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll just briefly introduce the topic. The city's non-exclusive cable franchise with Comcast is a contract that outlines the conditions under which the company operates its cable television business, which makes use of the public rights of way for commercial activities. The ways in which these agreements are created and enforced is governed by City Code, federal law, and Federal Communications Commission rules, and the current agreement is due to expire January 1st of 2019. Last month, the FCC opened up a rulemaking proceeding that directly impacts components of the current franchise agreement, and staff believes that it is prudent to obtain additional information regarding these impacts before moving forward with franchise renewal. And an 18-month extension of the current franchise is recommended. Comcast is in agreement with the extension, and this is a public hearing on the proposed 18-month franchise extension ordinance.
Thank you. And we don't have anyone who has come to the public hearing, so I get to close the public hearing and use my gavel. Thank you. And now we have one more action item, appointment to the Budget Committee.
I move to appoint Alicia Voorhees to the Budget Committee for an unexpired term ending of June 30, 2020.
Second.
Discussion, Councillor Syret.
Yeah, I'd like to make a substitute motion. I'd like to substitute Adam Rue. If I get a second, I'll speak to it.
Second.
This is not to take away from Alicia Voorhees' qualifications, but frankly, in the course of casting my vote on this particular vacancy, I had some confusion in how many vacancies there were, and my attempts with city staff to clarify that didn't work for me. So I ended up casting 3 votes when I might have actually just cast 1. I was pointed out to me that my vote was the one that made the difference, and so I would like to have this council consider Adam Rue instead. He is El Rapa Budget Committee member and works for eWeb. I think I just recall in our interviews that I was impressed with his approach to the work, and think that bringing someone who's been serving on the El Rapa Budget Committee would also have some nice resonance with our Budget Committee and some of the other work that we're being pointed to in terms of our Climate Energy Action Plan. So I'd like to consider folks supporting my substitute motion.
Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councillor Surratt's point on her, on the person she's making a motion towards. I would suggest that there are no other people on the Budget Committee other than me who are from Ward 5, and we have had this issue discussed many times. Alicia was very close second in the last round, and I thought it made good sense that she was given consideration, considering that she was next in line, as it were, in the previous discussions. As someone who has been very involved in the community and a financial analyst herself, I think she's immensely qualified and gets to speak for a part of our community that doesn't often get to. So I hope members will support her. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? Okay, so we vote first on the substitution. So all in favor of a substitution? Are you voting or do you want to speak?
No, I want to vote.
You want to vote? Okay, okay, I thought we were too, but then the way your hand went up. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed to the substitution? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to vote opposed to the no, I'm sorry, I'm going to vote in favor of the substitution. No, wait a second. I'm opposed to the substitution. Okay, got it. Okay, so the substitution fails. So now we're back to the original vote. All in favor of Alicia Voorhees' appointment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. Thank you so much. And that closes the meeting. A little confusing.